Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. Halloween was always Tim's favorite holiday until his mother was diagnosed with brain cancer. Now, all he wants is a quiet night in that is quickly disrupted when his friends pay him an unwanted visit after stealing a mysterious sack from the doorstep of a crazy local. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for Creeping Death. Just want to start this review off by thanking, of course, the good folks over at Screambox for sending us a screener for this so we could get it reviewed and out to you guys. Yes, Creeping Death is going to be premiering on Screambox this Tuesday, which is September 10th. So if you are anticipating this one, grab some candy, grab some popcorn, sit down in front of your TV Tuesday night, and check it out. I have been really looking forward to this one, and I don't know necessarily what it was about it. Well, I know the image that got me into it, but when Bloody Disgusting wrote up a little article about this, Luke, it hit right when I was on Twitter. I was just scrolling, looking at things, and I saw that shot, that silhouetted shot of, I'll say, our killer, and just the orange and everything. And I just was like craving October Halloween horror. And I saw that, and it just, all the lights were perfect. I was like, yes, this looks good. This sounds fun. It's going to be low budget. It's going to be some independent filmmakers trying to go out and make something new and fresh. I'm in. I'm in for it. So I've been anticipating Creeping Death for quite a number of months now.
I've been excited about it as well. I was right there with you when that image dropped. It looked like it was so well done. Encapsulated the Halloween season seemingly in one image, which is always hard to do. But, as we get closer and closer to Halloween here, we're, of course, going to be getting more and more Halloween-themed films. And we are a sucker, of course, for the Halloween-themed films, especially when you're kind of dealing with maybe a smaller town and kind of world building in a sense. Tis the season, we're getting a little bit of a cold front here. So it really does feel like the Halloween season is upon us. But, going into this one, I was rather intrigued to see their take. I think maybe that it seemed like a subgenre mashup a little bit. I think they mentioned supernatural with a slasher. So I was curious to see how they were going to tackle that aspect of it. I love when they kind of meld two different subgenres together and what they're going to bring to the table. I got to be honest with this one. I think there are elements in here that work, and then there are some elements in here that don't work. So, when you go into these smaller budgeted films, that budget is always going to be an issue just because you don't have so many resources at your disposal. But for what they were able to accomplish here, I think this film really did encapsulate the Halloween season.
I agree, and that was one of my big positives. But yeah, if we want to talk criticisms right off the rip, just to get those out of the way, I am going to say that I think you're right. There are elements to this that really impressed me. There are elements to this that I think have great potential. And then there are a lot of elements that I would say are kind of drawbacks to this being a much smaller production. I see this as looking like, and I don't have any insider information on this, but this does seem like we have the director, I believe, writer, director, main actor, Matt Semperi, who is the kind of person really pushing this forward. You can tell that this is probably shot, at a friend's house or, with friends. There's actors in here who don't necessarily feel like acting is their number one career choice. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, because there are a couple of people in the friend group who don't necessarily feel like they're all like together with it. They don't feel like they're absolutely like selling this dialogue or selling this scenario all that well to me. They feel like they are there to basically fit into a role, and that is okay when you're dealing with a film at this level, at this budget, because that's our short films are that. So it's like I kind of identify with that a little bit, where it's like we are casting friends, we are casting people who we believe in and we think are really good, but by, you know, traditional acting standards, yeah, it's like nobody here is classically trained. Nobody here is like really going for the gold as far as just like, you know, I am going to take this very seriously and I'm going to run through it. Not saying that they didn't, but I'm just saying that you do have some drawbacks there with that. And in turn, to be honest, a lot of the dialogue between friends isn't the strongest. It really does feel like a lot of the dialogue when people are just having conversations really feels like we're falling into just those stereotypical archetypes of an 80s slasher, which on one hand can be nostalgic and fun. Some conversations, some things can be very grating.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that I picked out just at the very beginning was some of the dialogue choices for me. It feels, in a sense, sometimes generic in terms of what they are delivering. Not necessarily 100% authentic, I feel, especially when you have a small friend group like that. I think I'm more so looking for diverse characters, not necessarily that we have to have a whole bunch of situations entangled into one, but more so, you know, we're not just falling into those traps of these basic, characters that don't really have too much depth. With I do think we fall into here for the most part. I think our main character Tim has the most in depth of his character and what he's going through with his character arc. But you know, the other ones just seem almost like cannon fodder, where we just needed to kind of fill out the field in a sense to have some players and for our supernatural slasher to play with. So for me, I think there weren't too many characters here that I could really attach myself to. Tim being the most attachable, where we kind of get into those personal issues with him. But even those, that performance for me, sometimes we go from from an emotional level from 0 to 100, and there is no kind of warm up period. There's no crescendo to anything. It's just kind of 1 minute we're feeling one emotion, the next minute we're feeling another. So it's really hard to, find your groove in those scenes when you don't know what to expect emotionally or what you're supposed to be feeling. So, I think getting into feeling as part of the friend group, I did have a lot of trouble, just because I didn't really connect with any of these characters.
No, and I totally understand that. I think that I agree with you that Tim was definitely, as you know, when you're dealing with a project like this, it's more often than not that you're going to kind of probably gravitate towards the main character the most. But I agree, there were some choices with his character that were kind of perplexing, maybe a tad forced. It kind of felt like we were in a groove. We started to figure out this character a bit, and then the script said that we had to do this, so I have to do it. It's like, and I think there's one scene in particular, which I will not spoil, where that is really apparent. We were talking about it off air quite a bit. But I think overall, yes, he is the most likable. And I actually really liked Delilah Lincourt as Daniela West. I thought that they had potential to give us some kind of a nice, sweet kind of story between them. I liked the kind of, I guess, ambiguity of what their situation was, but they never expound upon it. So it's like they tease you with it a bunch. And, you know, if I'm looking at just like trying to ground our characters, make them likable, make them more sympathetic, the situation that Tim's character is dealing with, kind of having to put your, you know, young adult life on hold because of some events with your mother, obviously in the description, you know, I would have liked to have dove into that a little bit more. I feel like that more so than anything could have really gotten me attached to the characters a bit more and could have made some of the dialogue feel a bit more natural and a bit more believable when it comes to just their situation and what they're going for. But it always feels like we're right on the outskirts of really diving into it. Again, it feels like once we kind of start to find our footing there, we realize that we're in a slasher movie and we have to start playing into our slasher tropes, because it's just, and I felt that give and take is a little bit like jarring at times.
No, yeah, it felt like sometimes the dynamic of the film was almost battling itself, I think, because when you dive into these small town stories, I think the most interesting part are our characters and kind of feeling part of the group. We just, took a look at test screening, and we kind of talked about the camaraderie that those characters feel and how authentic they feel. Whereas, looking at Creeping Death, they do a great job of, making that small town feel that it is the Halloween season. And for me, that's something I would have loved to have lived in before we got to our supernatural slasher element, where it's like, you encapsulate that so well that just open up the town some more. Let's see some of our characters dealing with other issues, kind of understanding that friendship dynamic, and then at that point you've already earned your points, and then you can throw in what we all came to see with the supernatural slasher. But it does seem like we give our characters just enough, and we kind of fit into these archetypes a little bit, and then we move into our dynamic of our supernatural slasher, getting into the swing of things. So I never found myself fully in the groove. There are some questionable decisions with our characters. There was that situation you were talking about with Tim. For me, that was a hard situation to get behind, especially to get behind that character as far as it does go. To an extent, I think was a little bit of an odd choice. But as soon as we start moving into seeing our character or our supernatural slasher that we've seen, in the poster, and getting into those elements, that's really when the film starts to really get going.
I agree. And those going into my positives, that all of that stuff is very, very interesting and actually executed pretty impressively, in my opinion. I think that the actual design and look of our slasher entity character is pretty impressive. And I think that there's a lot that goes into that I quite enjoyed. Like when you see their face and you get the sense of it being kind of like a, without getting too deep into it, it's almost like a Halloween mask, and there's something going on under it when it comes to this kind of flickering effect, almost like a candle is inside. It's like you never really get to see what exactly we're dealing with full force other than what is represented in the costume. And I love that. I think that they absolutely put a lot of time and effort into making the slasher himself look and feel intimidating and cool and fun. And I just wish that we would have spent a little bit more time with him, like you said, getting into the town on the outskirts. We get a tiny bit of that, but I just think that the stuff that we get is so quick, it's so fast. It's like, could we have followed this character as we're kind of moving through the night, getting up to our kind of inevitable meeting point between Tim and his friends and this character? We could have had something really, really interesting with that. And I think that there's great potential to continue on with this slasher of sorts if they can find a way and really build off of it, because not only just the look, but we were discussing it off air, the lore to this is very well done. It's very well thought out. It's original, in my opinion. I haven't seen anything too close to what they're kind of setting up here. And when they finally give it to you, it feels very old Hallows Eve. It feels very much like they're pulling from something that is like ancient and very, very cool to kind of connect dots to and try to find an inlet here to tell a slasher story.
Yes, and that was my probably favorite part, was this establishing the lore that we do get here. There's a nice visual with a big book, which I think is absolutely well done. Probably one of my favorite things from the film, where we're kind of explaining the backstory here and what exactly the concept is of our film in general, and what this character, this Ishi, is doing. Um, and sometimes when we sit through this telling of a backstory or establishing a lore, it feels a little heavy-handed. It feels like we've been in the scene too long. This, for me, was the complete opposite. I loved
Hmm.
learning about this. I love the visuals that they do the close-ups with. The drawings here are haunting. For me, that scene's probably my favorite scene in this, as we kind of go through it, because we are kind of understanding our situation in general. So for me, I think being able to establish that lore and bring something different, something that I haven't really seen in a Halloween film like this, I thought there's so much potential here to expand upon and do something with this. So, like you said, maybe we could have had more instances with our slasher. And I think, opening up this world, making it feel like a small town. I wouldn't say it's Haddonfield levels, but, it's in that ballpark of, you can see those glimmers of a lot of potential and being able to open up this town and do something. I would have loved to have seen our slasher in different situations throughout the night, and kind of, seeing method to the madness and all this. I understand budgets. You can't really open up too much, but I think that would have been a very compelling aspect. But with the establishment of the lore that we do have, there is certainly a lot of potential. You can see that the creators have a love for the craft here and being able to tell this story. So, if Creeping Death 2 ends up on Screambox, you can sign me up for it because I think there is so much diving back into the well for this lore. I think you can do a lot.
Yeah, and I kept comparing this very much to kind of the Terrifier or All Hallows Eve of, this film, where it's like I compared it to those, where it's like I don't love those films. I don't think that they necessarily capture the full idea of what these filmmakers who are behind them are trying to put on screen. But I think that there's enough of an idea there. There's enough nuggets that are good and are solid that it does make it exciting, especially nowadays with how we've seen these successes with, of course, Terrifier, but also like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and how they were able to shoot up and stuff. And I'm not saying this is nearly as laughable as like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, the first one, but like this is definitely, you can see there's enough ideas here. There's enough potential that if they were to go forward and expand upon it and actually, tweak some of this dialogue, work on some of these characters, and give us more of this slasher, they could have something that's very compelling and actually, I think, really connect with many, many horror fans. Because I think, like, we're definitely on the more positive side with this one. We definitely had a good time with it, but I think we're also coming at it from people who've seen a lot of independent horror over the last 2 years, who've seen a lot of things that are, definitely not up to the caliber that many general audiences expect from something like this. And it makes it us a little bit more, I guess, prepared when it comes to watching something like this, to where we can see what they're going for, what the good of it is, and see the potential. So I worry that just with how these characters are portrayed and how much time we spend with them, and especially one character who is Nate, who just really I found very grating after a while. I worry that that's going to really drag the film down from seeing the potential of this lore and this. And I will say that although there are some kills and some of them are pretty well done and pretty fun, you're not getting like that Damien Leone style of, okay, the movie might be just all right, but the kills and the gore and the effects are absolutely like the selling point. Like they don't have that. All they have is the lore and their character to really get me in the seat again and say, I really like this. I want to see this continue.
I could see this being a bit of a struggle for someone who just randomly turns this one on without any kind of preparation. If you've seen the trailer, you kind of know what to expect in terms of budget, quality of film. You can only do so much with the resources that you do have. And of course, us being short filmmakers aspiring to be feature filmmakers, independent filmmaking tugs at our heartstrings because we know the struggle there. You would love when you have a great concept like Creeping Death and you're writing it on the page, and in your head you're just having infinite amounts of money and seeing a pristine product come out. But then when you're creating an actual product, sometimes you have to make compromises and you don't get to see that full vision. Now, Creeping Death, we're able to look at this and say there's so much potential here that you can really expand upon. There are some great tent poles in this film. There's a lot of glimmers of potential in terms of being able to progress through the horror genre and even a sequel to Creeping Death. Now, I think it could be a struggle for some people who just hop in here from a dialogue perspective, from a performance perspective. But I think once you get to that lore, I think that's going to be the big selling point. So, if you're cold on this film, I say get to that point, and I think you could have some enjoyment. I think it will be either you're in or you're out probably within the first 10 minutes of this film. So, I think looking at the film itself, I'm going to give this worth a watch. I think there's certainly a lot of potential here. The dialogue, some of the stuff was a little bit of an uphill battle for me, a little bit of a struggle to get through, but I think there's a lot of potential here. So worth a watch for me.
Yeah, and for me, I agree with everything Luke said, and not to reiterate all the stuff that I've said. I will just lean very much into the bare bones of just where I sit with, Creeping Death. And I think that this is definitely giving me the Halloween vibes that I'm looking for. This is definitely something that I could see myself putting on again in during October, especially if we get the notion that there will be a sequel and that we're going to expand this story, because I think there is so much potential here. And again, we've seen it time and time again that I want there to be some expansion here. I want them to continue with this world and really building onto this lore, because it can really, really, I think, stand toe to toe with some of the greats once they actually get more of their footing, get some more money behind this, and actually focus in on what makes this film special. And I'm telling you, what makes this film not special are those traditional point by point slasher elements that feel very forced. It feels like this movie's telling a story, and then it's like, well, we have to make this what the people came to see, which is a slasher. So we have to have, some nudity. We have to have some, people making dumb decisions. It's like, let's try to stay away from that, because I think with the lore that you're establishing here and the things that you have in play, you can tell a much smarter, much more interesting story, in my opinion. And that's kind of my hope for this. I still found myself, even though I'm being very analytical and very critical, enjoying Creeping Death enough that I was not disappointed. I sat down hoping to feel those Halloween vibes and hoping to kind of have a nice, interesting story with hopefully what was going to be a very interesting character. And I got pretty much all of that. But there are elements around it that I do fear will make it tough for other audiences. But for me, this is something I'll revisit. This is something I would like to get this on VHS, just because there's a couple of shots in here that I absolutely want to see in that quality. The one money shot of our silhouetted slasher with the lights around him, just perfect shot. My God, like, I want that so bad. I want to be able to capture something that just really sucks you in and makes you feel like this is a killer on Halloween night, but not just a killer, some kind of supernatural killer. And I love that. And for me, I'm going to go with a recommend. It is a bit of a low tier recommend, a lot closer to like what Luke was saying with worth a watch, but I still think that they did enough for me, and I had enough of a good time with this that I just want to see them continue, and I want to see them, take a couple of big leaps forward. So I have no problem with supporting this film and saying, I enjoyed it enough, and just being honest. I liked it enough. I can be critical all day long, but I still found myself happy with the product overall. That is Creeping Death. So yeah, there you go, guys. This thing is going to be on Screambox on, like I said, September 10th. Definitely give it a watch, especially if you're already a subscriber. I really want to hear what people's thoughts and opinions are on this. Do they think that we can get a little bit more of a franchise out of this? And either way, I'm really happy to support these filmmakers. I think that they, again, were working with what they had, and they still were able to bring us something that I think is a lot of fun. So until next time, that's going to wrap it up here. We got a lot of great stuff up on the channel, but I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast,